So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis. But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last week.
Imagine this, a popular daytime talk show, a confident TV host, and a group of students suddenly thrown into the middle of a firestorm. It all started when The View, yes, that show, decided to take a swing at Turning Point USA, a conservative student group. But they didn't just go after the organization. No, they took it a step further and targeted over 5,000 young people who attended their event. Teenagers, high schoolers, college students. Many of them flew across the country, paid their own way, and showed up just to hear speakers talk about politics and values.
Charlie Kirk took issue with this depiction of his organization. Kirk maintains that Turning Point USA is not affiliated with anti-Semitism or white supremacists. In a strongly worded tweet, the 28-year-old stated, "Talking to lawyers, many think we have a strong case. You cannot smear minors as and get away with it. It impacts them for the rest of their life. Hashtag sue the View." That's when TPUSA went all in. The organization changed its profile pic on Twitter to hashtag sue the View, posted a number of tweets condemning The View and demanding an apology.
Then came the moment that lit the fuse. On air, The View suggested that these students might somehow be linked to neo-Nazi groups. That wasn't just careless, it was a media grenade. Now, Charlie Kirk, the face behind Turning Point USA, didn't take this lightly. He wasn't just upset that he got criticized, he was furious that these young people, most of them under the age of 21, were being smeared on national television. He said it plainly. These kids now have to carry a public stain tied to a lie, all because someone at ABC threw out a reckless comment. He wanted accountability, not for himself, but for the students who trusted his organization and now had their reputations dragged through the mud. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and bring you more jaw-dropping stories like this. Now, let's continue. And just when you thought it couldn't get more explosive, Sunny Hostin decided to double down. Sitting at the table on The View, she didn't just criticize political views, she took a direct shot at uneducated white women. Her words, that a big chunk of Donald Trump's support came from women without college degrees. Then she threw in a smug jab, making it clear she sees a lack of formal education as a lack of intelligence. But here's where it got personal for a lot of viewers. People watching weren't just disagreeing with her, they felt insulted. Because, let's be real, just because someone didn't go to college doesn't mean they're stupid.
They have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money. And your students definitely could, too.
And when you're sitting in a $1 million studio, sipping coffee on a major network, casually calling large groups of everyday people uneducated, it doesn't come off as brave. It comes off as arrogant. This moment gave Charlie Kirk everything he needed. He pounced. He framed it as a perfect example of what he calls elitist hypocrisy, a woman with a law degree on national TV mocking Americans who didn't take the same path as her. Many of those people work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and most importantly, vote. And if you were one of those people watching from home, you didn't hear a political debate. You heard someone telling you that your voice matters less because you didn't pay tens of thousands of dollars for a college diploma. That one moment shifted the tone of the entire controversy. And trust me, it only got worse from there. But here's the twist. Charlie Kirk never even stepped foot on The View. There was no dramatic walk-on, no screaming match across a table, no face-to-face confrontation. He didn't need any of that. Instead, he hit back from a completely different location, launching a full-scale response video that landed like a digital uppercut. The production? Next level. This wasn't a shaky phone rant in a car. It was polished, pre-scripted, packed with edits, dramatic zooms, and intense background music.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the event.
It looked less like a rebuttal and more like a campaign ad fused with a demolition derby. Every frame was designed to embarrass Sunny Hostin. Every sentence was sharpened like a dagger. He didn't just challenge her opinions, she lit them on fire and tossed them into the algorithm for the internet to feast on, and the timing perfect. Just hours after The View aired, Kirk's video was already spreading like wildfire. Within minutes, Twitter was ablaze. YouTube reactions were dropping like dominoes, and TikTok creators were remixing it into 15-second KO edits while Sunny was still sitting under the studio lights. Kirk had taken control of the narrative from a completely different zip code. It was modern media warfare, and he knew exactly how to win, not with facts, not with fairness, but with flash, speed, and pure online dominance. And the scariest part for The View, he made her look like she lost a debate without even being in the room.
Turning Point conference, the were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and the I think it's important that every single person that attended that Turning Point, every Republican speak up against these, because against the Nazi flags that were waved.
This whole thing wasn't really about who was right. It was about who looked like they were in control. And once Kirk's video hit the internet, Sunny Hostin suddenly didn't look like the confident legal analyst we're used to seeing. Her posture shifted. Her tone got shakier. The smile started to feel forced. People noticed, and not in a good way. The internet doesn't care about nuance. It doesn't slow down for explanations. What it does care about is how someone looks while taking a hit. And Sunny looked rattled. Not yelling. Not flipping tables. This wasn't Real Housewives. It was worse. It was that quiet kind of breakdown where you're trying hard to keep it together, but your face keeps betraying you. Her eyes darted toward the teleprompter, like it held an escape route. Her voice wobbled. Her whole vibe said, "How did this go so wrong?" Online, people weren't debating the ideas anymore. They were replaying her expressions. Slowed down clips of her blinking too fast, fidgeting, glancing around, started spreading like wildfire. It was no longer about politics. It was about optics. And the optics said she got steamrolled.
On Monday, we talked about the fact that there were openly demonstrators outside the Florida Student Action Summit of the Turning Point USA group. We want to make clear that these demonstrators were gathered outside the event and that they were not invited or endorsed by Turning Point USA. A Turning Point USA spokesman said the group, quote, 100% condemns those ideologies, and said Turning Point USA security tried to remove the neo-Nazis from the area but could not because they were on public property. Also, Turning Point USA wanted us to clarify that this was a Turning Point USA summit and not a Republican Party event. So we apologize for anything we said that may have been unclear on these points.
Charlie Kirk didn't just dismantle her argument. He cracked the armor of her entire media persona. And when a high-profile host like Sunny, polished, experienced, camera-ready, starts visibly unraveling on air, that's the kind of content the internet eats for breakfast. Now here's where things got really ugly. After the on-air comments linking Turning Point USA's student attendees to neo-Nazis, the organization didn't just get mad, they got legal. A cease and desist letter was sent straight to The View. Not a warning, not a gentle request, a legal threat. The message was clear. You don't get to smear 5,000 young people and walk away like nothing happened. What made it worse? how hard these students had worked just to be there. Flights were expensive. Gas was through the roof. Many of them saved up for months, took time off work, and flew across the country just to hear speakers talk about politics, freedom, and values. And now they were being lumped in with hate groups on national television.
Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me. And it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, the state, the U.S.
Over the weekend, Turning Point USA hosted a riveting event in Tampa, Florida called the Student Action Summit. Outside of the event were individuals waving flags and engaged in other activities. Well, on Monday's show, members of The View made a few comments about it.
The conservative group Turning Point USA has condemned the group of neo and said they have nothing to do with the organization.
Yeah, but where was DeSantis is what I want to know.
But you let them in.
President, open your
You
mouth.
let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit.
But despite all that, they came. Teenagers and college kids from every corner of the country showed up to attend this conservative summit. They weren't waving hate symbols. They weren't rioting. They came to hear speakers, to be part of a movement, and to learn. And instead of being recognized for their dedication, they got lumped in with a fringe group that wasn't even inside the event. Kirk made it crystal clear, Turning Point did not invite those extremists. In fact, they tried to have them removed, but couldn't because the protesters were on public property. But that didn't stop the hosts of The View from painting them all with the same brush. That false image? It stuck. And Kirk wasn't going to let it slide. He called it what it was, a deliberate smear.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. Or
The video didn't just criticize her stance. It turned her into a symbol of everything the conservative audience loves to hate. Media privilege, academic snobbery, and dismissiveness toward working-class people. The reaction was instant. The clip exploded across social media. It wasn't just trending, it was dominating. Comments flooded in. Reaction channels lit up like a Christmas tree. Viewers weren't just watching Sunny Hostin, they were watching her squirm. And they loved it. The worst part? She couldn't fight back, not effectively. Because when the internet turns you into a symbol, into a meme, you stop being a person. You become a target. And that's exactly what Sunny had become. Then came the headlines, loud, mocking, and absolutely everywhere. Phrases like, Charlie Kirkin's daytime delusion. Sunny Hostin hit with reality brick. Timeline feeds clogged. Subreddits turned into feeding frenzies. TikTok edits zoomed in on every micro-expression Sunny made. Her blinking, her shifting in the chair, her tight smile. All looped, remixed, memed, and shared by the second. And while all of this exploded online, something strange started happening on The View itself. The energy in the studio dropped. The conversation stalled. Even the audience didn't know when to clap or when to cringe.
Your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sunny?
Yeah, and again, by the way, rarely do you get the answer to a question in the question. And her whole question is exactly why there was a rebellion against them.
Yes.
Listen, just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. I always differentiate between knowledge and wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. I mean, or about North African lesbian poetry. Okay, that stuff's fine, I guess.
You could almost feel the awkward tension slipping through the screen. Sunny, the unshakable, always poised legal commentator, suddenly looked like she was sinking. She wasn't yelling or ranting. She wasn't storming off set. But the unraveling was happening in real time. Through the sighs, the fidgeting, the way her confidence cracked with each word. Her calm, commanding presence had been replaced with a discomfort that was impossible to hide. And all the while, Charlie Kirk was nowhere near the studio. He was probably already popping champagne from his digital throne, watching as the internet turned his response into a cultural nuke. He didn't have to dominate the conversation in person, because the internet had already decided. This was a takedown. A clean, brutal, meme-fueled takedown. And Sunny was at the center of it. At this point, it wasn't even about the argument anymore. Charlie Kirk had shifted focus entirely. He wasn't just calling out Sunny's comment. He was going after everything she represented. The suit, the degrees, the media training, the image of polished, educated authority. He tore that image down like it was built out of matchsticks. And the way he did it? Ruthless. He dropped another video, this one even more over the top. Dramatic music, flashy graphics, slow zooms on Sunny's face. It looked like a movie trailer for a political...
The point I'll say is this, is Sunny, you guys thought that abortion was going to be this like quasi-zealot religious issue. I'm pro-life. If people in the audience aren't, that's fine. What I'm saying though, what gives me promise, and I think we can all agree on this, is that there are other issues that should animate and drive our politics other than this very divisive one. And I was really encouraged by that, Megan. Very encouraged, because the media was forcing this as an up or down vote on a referendum on a highly complicated, very emotional, very personal issue. And it turned out the American people were like, yeah, actually, these other 6 things matter more.
But underneath all the edits, the message was crystal clear. People like Sunny, the polished liberal voices on daytime TV, don't speak for regular Americans. And they never did. The impact was immediate. Viewers didn't just repost the video. They turned it into reaction content. YouTubers stitched in their own commentary. TikTokers layered in sad violin music. Gen Z turned it into dance memes. It wasn't just a viral clip. It became an ecosystem. Every fidget, every blink from Sunny's on-air appearance was now monetized, memed, looped into a dozen different formats. And the most brutal detail? She never screamed. She never lost her temper. Her breakdown wasn't loud. It was silent real. The kind of unraveling you can't fake. And in today's internet, that's blood in the water. Viewers don't need a chair thrown to call it a meltdown. They just need to see that one look that says, I wasn't ready for this. And that's exactly what she gave them. Then came the apology. Not a full-on press conference. Not a dramatic, tears-on-camera moment. But a carefully worded statement slipped into The View's next broadcast. Sunny said she didn't like being judged by assumptions, and admitted she had done just that to the students at the Turning Point USA Summit. A quiet my bad. But by then it was way too late, because outside the studio, the online world had already exploded. Conservative blogs labeled it a cultural victory. Kirk's fans celebrated like their team had won the Super Bowl. Reaction videos spliced Sunny's discomfort into endless loops. One creator even added flames behind her, calling it the crash of credibility. It was everywhere. Even TikTok got involved. Users took her facial expressions and turned them into meme templates. One viral clip had her blinking, layered over a dubstep remix. It wasn't just commentary anymore. It was entertainment. And Sunny Hostin, whether she liked it or not, was now the star of a digital train wreck. Meanwhile, Charlie Kirk was glowing. Not just because his argument landed, but because his platform had fully hijacked the story. Traditional media tried to play catch-up. They issued corrections. They clarified details. But none of it mattered anymore. The internet had already moved on. And Sunny had become the face of what happens when you underestimate how brutal, how fast, and how relentless meme culture really is. She apologized with dignity. But dignity doesn't go viral. Humiliation does. And here's what made this all hit even harder. Charlie Kirk didn't win because he had the most brilliant argument or the deepest facts. He won because he understood the rules of the new game. And Sunny Hostin? She walked into that game thinking it was still about reason, law degrees, and polished delivery. But in 2025, media battles are about who can create the most viral emotional moment, not who's right. Kirk treated her like a Twitter handle, not a person. He stripped away the nuance, turned her into a symbol, and launched her into the algorithm with the power of a flamethrower and a smug grin. And it worked. His videos spread like wildfire. His fans turned it into GIFs, memes, even merchandise. At one point, people were selling t-shirts with her reaction face printed across the front. And Sunny? She was still trying to steer a daytime talk show, unaware that a storm had already hit. She came prepped with legal analysis and moral clarity. But Kirk brought a meme war, and she brought a